We're thrilled to have you all with us today. We are now, I think, officially the longest consecutively running art fair in the world. So it's no small feat. We're thrilled to have with us today one of our dear longtime partners, Galerie magazine. Jacqueline Terrebonne, editor-in-chief of Galerie, is going to be leading this panel discussion today. And with her, we have Ashlee Harrison, who's the former director of Carpenter's Workshop and has recently launched her own advisory and consultancy firm. We have the fabulous Nancy Lorenz, who's a wonderful artist whose work you'll see here, and whose work I think I first saw you, your first show, you said, right? That's amazing. And Brian J. McCarthy, who is one of America's leading interior designers, and we're delighted to have him with, also a former design co-chair of the Winter Show. But we're thrilled to welcome you all today, and turning it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I couldn't think of a better topic to be discussing today at the Winter Show. And it really came about when I was talking to Helen, like, what should Galerie do? And it was at the same time that we were working on this story for the winter issue of Galerie with Brian J. McCarthy on this fantastic project that's on the cover. And it was filled. Every room has something special, something made by an artist specifically for the project, and it comes alive. And it's such a treasure to have in Galerie magazine because as talented and wonderful, and maybe because as talented and wonderful as Brian is, he never really gets to show his work. The clients are always very private. And then it just flowed so naturally because Nancy has several pieces in the home, including a full installed room of panels that's just absolutely mesmerizing. And Ashlee worked with Brian a lot on some of the special pieces, like the light fixture above the bar, which is just mad. Yeah, with nacho. And the drift. So many pieces.
No nacho. I wish there was nacho. There is no nacho.
So we're going to be talking about this project. Everybody got this project specifically, but also all of the different things that working with artists on special commissions can bring to a project. So, Brian, why don't you kick it off by just talking to us about, what are the important pieces in this project that are such standouts to you?
Kind of everything, in the sense that these clients were so trusting. We had done a very neoclassical house for them. When the apartment came about, I sort of said, okay, we're not repeating part of what we've already done. I really want this to be a totally different experience, urban and all of that. And they were just fully on board. We've worked together for a long time. But, really the introduction to the contemporary artists, working with Ashlee, and just being able to get their eyes on all the diversity of all these different things, and how you can sort of weave that into storytelling and decorating. And so that's for all of my projects. That's the greatest joy. Being able to work with the artist directly is the biggest joy of all.
It's mutual, for sure.
But
it's mutual.
Yeah,
when Brian calls, you just say yes, and we start. He'll give me an image of something that inspires him, then it'll relate to something I have in the studio, and it's such a collaboration, and it makes my world so much bigger. And
and it's a very organic process. I mean, when we started on this project that's in the magazine, we started, and Nancy, which you can all come up and see afterwards, is showing two versions, sort of the initial version, which was much more naturalistic, not naturalistic, but much more.
And this is for the panel.
Yeah, for the paneled room. Yeah, much more representational. And as we started going through the process, on one of the visits, I looked at Nancy and I said, Nancy, I want this to represent you. And I love the idea that you can abstract this into your idea. And that's what she did so brilliantly. And when you're in this room, you feel like you're outdoors, indoors. Really, the sweep and the air and the lightness that you feel in there. It was the most difficult room in the apartment to do because there's nothing symmetrical. You get these columns. I mean, it was really a problem architecturally, but by working with Nancy and doing these beautiful panels, that's what made the room. And you walk in there and you don't think twice about what's not perfect about it. It appears pretty perfect.
Oh,
So how did that process start for you, Nancy, when Brian brought you in?
so the process, just to be specific, you brought that beautiful image, the
Here it is.
hall.
Just for
Oh, there's the room. It's hard to see in those pictures, but the first inspiration picture you brought was the Paul Poiret, that beautiful tree in the indigo. And I just thought, that's such a dream. What a dreamy reference for a sitting room. And then you pointed to this piece here in the studio, and it had similar qualities with the indigo. I don't know. You can come up later and see. But it's kind of my signature materials with mother of pearl inlay. It's got gilding. It's got the lacquer. And while the image you showed me was very graphic, my work, we talked about Whistler. We talked about more atmospheric painters that we really loved. So with that came the next step, which was developing these series of drawings, which you can come up and see. And we started out being quite graphic here. You'll see, branches and tree shapes. But what we ended up with was something much more gestural, and which, just looking back as I was gathering these today to bring here, I realized we went to all these other places with this project, but we ended up very similar to what you had just had seen in the same similar colors.
Yep.
But we had to go through this whole, well, it could be this, it could be that. And that process is something that I enjoy so much. Like, what should this room be? And to have a collaborator and the opportunity to have this huge canvas of the room was, just such a great opportunity.
And I knew I was in good hands.
And how much are you involving the client in this back and forth is getting there?
Well, with this client, I knew materially that she was going to fall in love with Nancy and Nancy's work. So we did a studio visit, and that was it. She walked in and she just lost her mind instantly.
Which anyone
and
does.
which anybody does, yes.
Enter in Nancy's world.
But actually, before we started the sitting room, it was the powder room. And there was already a sample that she had that really inspired this bathroom, which then led to the sitting room, because they got so energized, by the artwork and the materiality and all of that. And yet the experiences between these two rooms are totally different. So, at any rate, it was a very easy process. The clients, we went through the various iterations, and, as we got into it, I explained that I wanted to make it less figurative and more abstract, and they were just along for the ride. Super, super excited.
Well, you set it up for success. I mean, you had very specific ideas. It wasn't like, oh, Nancy, just do something. You set it up with very specific parameters, which helped me zero in on what would make the perfect, space for this particular room. And it was because of your vision that's you were able to pitch this to the client. I couldn't have done that. You were at 100%.
Oh,
necessary.
I was so fully on board. There was no talking me out of what I was trying to talk them into. So I knew I was going to be in trouble with myself if I didn't pull this off for them, which we did.
I mean, it's absolutely great work at home. Now, Ashlee, what pieces did you work together on in this project, and how did that go? Because you're working in a different way.
We worked with Drift on the Fragile Future.
Yeah.
We had some Dakotas. I think there was a coffee table as well.
Yep. We had Mullen shot in
We had
the
a
library.
big Mullen shot in the library. Ingrid did not.
We have Ingrid in the gallery. Yeah,
Yes.
pair of cabinets.
You have Wendell Castle. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there's
Very well represented Carpenter's workshop.
yeah.
Right. So you had to keep track of everything.
Yeah,
first
and,
of all.
and I was also like going through the projects. We've done a lot together over the years, so it's been, I think, interesting and really exciting always to collaborate with Brian, because you really are a champion of artists, and it's sometimes I think we can get so caught up in the business side of things that you forget why we got into this to begin with. But I think working with people like you and like it brings you back to like the creation, right? And getting the artist excited about doing something new, doing something different, finding new ways and new context of how to position the work, and all the layers of influence that we bring into it.
Well, I think we were working on a project in Switzerland
That's
with
what I was thinking
Nacho,
of earlier.
and it was during the pandemic, and of course everything was a Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing, which I think there's a photograph in here that will show you this. It was their family dining room. But we have a series of very thin, watery mirror and, Nacho's pieces, which are very tough materially and have weight, needed to be mounted on the glass. So technically, what he needed to engineer and the precision, which, because you have one small hole coming through the glass, and the whole process of working together on it, it was so exciting. Nacho, to me, is one of the geniuses of contemporary design. He is, in my view, one of the great masters. So for anybody that's really into contemporary design, I don't own a piece. I'm desperate to.
You will soon. We've been working on this.
I know.
And I think what Nacho also, one of the brilliance, and you seem very much in tune with this, is that he doesn't even know his own mastery, like how brilliant he is. And so it's like that humble kind of approach too that makes things, every new venture is really exciting to think about how he doesn't get stuck in a pattern and how you can rethink what he's doing. He pushes himself artistically. There's a sense of wonder working with him.
Well, and Nacho did a furniture line last year,
Yes.
and you couldn't, because we all knew him for his lighting, and the furniture as good as his best lighting. I mean, I was so blown away. You get all the materiality, you get all the movement, you just absolutely gorgeous.
There was a sense of continuity where you can see the relationship to what he was doing with the mesh light sculptures. But so continuity, materially speaking, continuity, like the ethos and the aesthetic, but he pivoted and did something completely new. And I think that's one of the exciting parts about working with artists that work in this context of design, is that they love a challenge and to push themselves and to kind of like take a departure and to rethink how they work is something that we do as a gallerist and also as an interior designer. It's like you have this idea, and then it's about the collaboration and how we work together to come up with a new vision.
And I would add to that too, that what's also really interesting about Carpenters is there's this sense of inspiration among the different artists with each other.
Right.
You'll see things introduced and you'll be like, I totally get it. It's almost like drawing a line from one to the other, even though it's all completely different. And I love that because to me, that's like a camaraderie that they all feel as a collective.
And I think there's a number of them that even went to school together. So there's that like kind of sense of influence, or they studied under the same heads in Eindhoven, like the Oudelcourt. Like the Oudelcourt was really responsible. She's the head of the Eindhoven Academy for a long period of time. And so many of these artists like Martin Bas, Nasser Carbonell, Drift, Verhoeven twins have been kind of birthed out of this program. And they all know each other. They're all influenced by each other, and that camaraderie, like you said, I think they play off of that. That really helps to get like a better result.
Absolutely.
For something like the drift piece, I feel like I've seen those before, the Fragile Future with the dandelions and go light gently through it. What about how did you sort of reimagine that and work together to create something specific for that bar space? I feel like the dimensions felt different. It felt like a version of it, but it had evolved in a special way for this.
Well, I think it was really proportion because it's longer. You've got this barrel vault and this apse end to the room. So how it was sort of speaking to the shape of the room, the scale of the room, the lightness of it in there with the gilded ceiling and the lacquered walls. I mean, it was kind of this synthesis of all these different materials that when you look at them on their own, you wouldn't necessarily think they all belong together. But when you put it all together, they all become one piece.
I agree. I think it's bringing new context too with the layering of the materials. And I think as from the artist's perspective, when they see an elevation or they see images of a space, it helps them also to think of like, how can it undulate or how can it work with the architecture of the space? And again, I call that drift piece has become kind of a classic, right, of contemporary design. And there are some images passing through the screen. But to work with on site specific work or to work with context of new materiality, I think you can put that piece in a very stark, minimalist, contemporary space, or you could put it in an architecturally historic space, and it has two different reads. So I think that's the beauty of a great work, is that it can live in many different iterations.
And I like what you were saying about the scale of the room too, because I feel like that Nolan shot chandelier too, like there's some big rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not normal residential scaled rooms. When we came to shoot, I remember walking and being like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, the Mullen shot too, because the library, we did a very Johnsonian, although he never referred to it this way, but growing up in the Parish Hadley days, Albert would always refer to this type of vaulted ceiling as a handkerchief vault, because it felt like you were grabbing it in the middle and then, letting it drop, and that's the shape. So the Mullen shot chandelier, the way it just plays off the sort of soft, pillowy, curves, it's absolutely gorgeous.
It's almost lyrical in the space.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful the way it's lit from within. You get the LED, so you're just getting the reflection of light. You're not getting the actual. Well, I was going to say, I think, the way I like to work with a lot of the contemporary art is you're making it a whole in the sense that you put the room together and everything belongs together. So it's not me saying, I'm going to put the Studio Drift chandelier in and that's what I want your eye to go to. I want you to take in the whole environment, and it's a part of that. So it's not singling things out. And even when I look at, art on walls, I view it the same way. It really becomes a part of this whole experience.
You're so great at
Yeah, well said.
All about weaving art into your projects, and
Try to.
and there won't be a Saturday that you're not in Chelsea where we're running into each other at galleries. I mean, we are all inspired by fine arts, and that's the basis of where I came from, along with living in Japan when I was a child, a high school student. So it's wonderful to see how you weave the art into all of your projects.
Well, it's trial and error too. And so for me at home, it's changed so much over the years as I've added to things. And, I say to anybody, collect what you love. Don't worry too specifically about where it's going to go. It's going to find its way in, however. And so, and also as you move things around, people come to visit, and it's as though, or they feel that they've never seen it before. It appears completely differently and newly. So, and that's, for me, that's the great joy too.
Saying about context,
And I don't really see a difference between one and the. I really feel that art and design, and at the level that we're working with artists, it is, I call them artists. The designers on the roster, always artists to me. It's just another medium of expression. Just like you have a painting, you have a table, but the approach and the artistic journey, the narrative, the materiality, the craftsmanship, like there's all that merit that to me it's a living artwork. It's a piece that you live with. You can eat on it, you can touch it, you can feel it. It's so much more. I don't want to, it's not sophisticated, but there's so many more layers to it than just it being separated and living on your wall.
Yeah, I think those boundaries have completely broken down. The hierarchy between
The hierarchy.
and object. And from the artist's point of view, I put as much heart into an object, a box, a screen, an elevator door as I do a painting.
You probably can't help yourself. It's like it's in you.
Yeah,
it's in your DNA.
Voice. So from an artist's point of view, there's really no distinction.
And Nancy did an amazing commission or an amazing work in Rome last year, which you should just for a second. I mean, are there pictures of that?
Didn't include those because it wasn't commissioned by the wasn't commissioned by the Pope or anything. But
Should have been.
Yeah. No, that would be wonderful if you could speak about that, Nancy.
It
Those were
was
such special works.
one of these. So I'm always, saying yes to outlandish projects, and I met this priest who.
Father Walter,
who has a church. It's the church that's on Piazza del Popolo. It's not the one where the Caravaggios are, but it's the one across. It's one of the Bernini churches, the twin churches. It's also known as the Church of the Artists. Since the 1950s, there's been a program where artists were invited to create an installation, a temporary installation. So I was, I guess, the second woman and the first American to be asked to do it. So, of course, I say yes.
and Father Walter does the social media for the Vatican.
For the Vatican,
Yeah,
yes.
just so you know
It's
that
just
part
sent-
Did
too.
you read about this at Galerie?
I did not. I was no. I was watching the whole process every time I'd go to the studio.
So you were there. Jackie was there. My friend Jenny, who's in the back. Hey, Jenny. Jenny was there. Anyway, so we had I had the opportunity. Well, the opportunity came up in 2019, and I started planning it. And then, of course, things got postponed because nobody was going to Italy until things reopened. So I had a lot of time to think about what it should be. And I created 4 site-specific banners that hung from the balconies. They were 25 feet by 10 feet each. And I did something, again, it was the opportunity of this site-specific piece that took me to different materials and different scale that I wouldn't have normally done, because it had to be shipped easily, and I wanted to use modest materials. So I decided it should be on burlap. So then, that led me to this whole other material. It had to be theatrical. It was more graphic than I usually work. And but these commissions are these, well, in this case, it was a self-designed commission. They take you to different places and expand materials the way you were saying your artists, enjoy these collaborations. It makes the artist world bigger to have these collaborations.
It was a very moving. And then what other sort of commissions are you working on now? I know you're very, very busy.
So along with, on one end is this work for the church, which there might be another iteration, which I'm talking to some people at St. John the Divine. So there's the non-commercial side of things. And then the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I'm very busy with new iterations for Tiffany's. I did a large installation on the 7th floor and on the 6th floor, thanks to Peter Marino, who I've also been collaborating with for the last 25 years. So Tiffany's, Dior, Chanel, all of those I'm very involved in, and there are many stores. So the idea is to come up, I don't like doing the same thing over again, so I'm always kind of reinventing the wheel and making new things for them. And then the other things that are happening, ongoing exhibitions I work with Galerie in Palm Beach, as you know. I'm just making paintings.
Furniture.
And furniture. It's a little something for Brian, one of Brian's clients.
Furniture.
Well, we did in this apartment too. We did a commode in the dining room, and Nancy did the panels,
The doors.
and the sort of carcass.
Right.
She wanted to kill me over that. That's the only time she's ever raised her voice.
That's the only...
It's like, if you don't want it to look handmade, then don't have me do it.
I gave him
You don't want to see the
I gave him a little lesson in
Yeah.
what hand polished lacquer should look
Yeah.
like.
which I knew, but I had to
Do you want a
challenge her
spray
on that to
lacquer
see
or
how
do
much
you
she
want-
knew.
Yeah. What else am I working on? I've always just working on a million things. Oh, elevator doors. That's something that I keep working on too, which has been another really fun, like new direction for me. Bill Sofield commissioned me to do elevator doors for the Steinway building. But we've had a really long history of elevator doors, and he wanted me to do, we were first thinking very grand, like, oh, let's make them in bronze. But of course, if you've got an Otis elevator door, there are very practical constraints about what could be put into code in a public space. So I found a foundry, a wonderful place in Dobbs Ferry, and we started experimenting with etching these Otis brass doors. And through patina and a painterly approach, I was able to create, impose my own art onto these otherwise very sort of sterile doors. And it was a way of activating a space that people spend a lot of time standing in front of. And it's a way of kind of sneaking in art where people don't normally, have the budget for or desire. So that was a really kind of a case where the parameters, again, took me to new places. And, I started doing these etchings and doors.
I feel like since I've seen those, I'll never look at a plain elevator door again. Like, what a waste. What a shame.
It's opportunity.
I think there's a rum in etched form by Nancy in her future.
Okay.
Totally.
I'm ready.
And Ashlee, you've been keeping very busy too.
I have. So, as you mentioned earlier, I after 10 years with Carpenters, I've taken a step back from my role as head of the Americas, and I have started, as of this month, my own venture for advisory and consulting. And really, with that, I really wanted to come full circle to why I got involved in this world to begin with, which is working with artists, working with the clients, to getting more into the artist development, like the development of the artist. So there's a few, I'm still keeping a toe with Carpenters, still consulting with my clients and working with the artists on special projects. But having this free space and time is giving me the ability to work on some interesting curatorial projects that I can't say yet, but you'll be hearing about that very soon. One that's going to take me to the West Coast. And then also being able to work with some younger artists and designers and really get down into the development of how can that look. And I think that's exciting to work with young talent. Where we want to put some effort into.
I feel like Brian, you do a very good job with that. I mean, your projects are definitely the best of the best, but there's always a fresh voice or someone I haven't seen before in there. Where are you looking for those talents? Where are you discovering them?
Gosh, just doing a lot of looking. I mean, you never know when you're going to stumble upon somebody. and there's always somebody like Ashlee in the background who has been, working with an artist, helping them to sort of find themselves, to develop themselves a bit. So it's, when I least expect it, but also I've been doing a lot of work for a very long time out of Paris. And so we have a group of artists there that I work with on every project. I will shove it down my clients' throats. And I think I have a client in the audience here. So I've made her a convert of sorts. And so Patrice D'Angel is one of my absolute favorites, who is not a young artist, but he's really one of the extraordinary ones. And also, I have to say, too, this goes back to Nancy, it's so much of it for me is the relationship, the friendship, the personality. And, that really, for me, that does the deal, before anything. That kind of starts there. If we have that feeling and that connection and it's all about open line of communication.
You're particularly enthusiastic and welcoming of that kind of relationship. I don't have that with all the designers I work with. It can work either way. I mean, but I think, obviously we get more out of the experience when we work together like this, but it's not a requirement. I don't have to have that kind of, but then it's not as...
I do.
But it might not be. Well, I'm also very, I've worked with enough, like in retail experience. You don't have to have that kind of. But for these residential projects, anything you do, I mean, it's
I'm a kid in a candy store if my clients will support it. And I don't mean that financially as much as conceptually. And not every project. What you're seeing here, too, is not the norm. So these are exceptional. And not everybody, does it to that degree. But yeah, and I kind of lose myself in every new job. I forget everything in my past that I've done. I may want to go back to various artists that we work with, but the idea is going to be completely unique. And that's what drives me. And I mean, I will say, honestly, the greatest pleasure I get in my job is the design and the execution and working with the artists.
And how do you lead your clients to that? How do you knew your client was going to love Nancy and love visiting her studio. How are you playing matchmaker? How are you making sure that it's connected?
I would never do that.
Yeah. Or how much are you sort of pressing them into ideas too?
Well, no, it's really, you come up with, the broad stroke, the big picture. And when we do the presentations, it's as complete as we can make it. We do storyboards so that even if it's not specifically what it might end up being, you're giving them the idea so that you really get this sense. You want to be able to understand the dialogue between all the elements in a room, which is really the complete room. It's architecture, the decoration, the furniture, as much as you can make that real, and I think that's not a hook, but that's the way for the client to really understand and visualize. I see 3D, most people don't. And so it's how to convey that. And this is also the beauty of, all of these, different computerized systems that we can do in terms of 3D. And, we can have a client walk in the front door and walk them through the house or the apartment. And, that rules out a lot of questions that might otherwise come up because you're really able to address it as they see it. And very often, depending upon who we're working with, we can even be sort of, tweaking things as we're in a meeting with a client. So it's, the technology today, I mean, when I think
a long
back,
way from watercolors.
Oh my God, when I think of all the hand drawing that everybody used to do, and so going back.
Still do that.
Well, yeah, thank God. But I mean, even in architecture though, when everything was hand drawn and, of course, everything is AutoCAD now. So, there's an element that comes through in the CAD drawings that's not the same as a hand, because you might not, I think in some cases, I go through this all the time. It's like, can we get away from all this square this and square that? I want to see something that's softer and more shapely. And So I think that's my biggest challenge right now, is trying to get it to another level that is not where we are right now. Don't ask me what that is.
How about for you, Ashlee? What's your role in this process of making the designer, the artist come together and make it happen with the client how do you facilitate that?
I think that a lot of it is, or the way I see how I present it is more like storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I love to share the information, share about the artist, share the narrative, like that story, and people gravitate to it or they don't. And that's when the magic starts to happen. When you see somebody's eyes light up and they're seeing, the drift piece for the first time, I can almost anticipate how somebody's going to react to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it reignites something inside you when you notice that, like, everybody has this similar, or different but similar reaction to that work. But I think it's a lot of shepherding the narrative and of the artist and their mission, and then being able to read the client's needs or understanding, what the scope of their project is about, and then being able to identify, like, oh, make suggestions. This artist might be great for that, or he's never done anything like this, but why don't we, pursue it and see what he comes up with, or she. And we do that a lot. And I think that, like, soundboarding is a big part of the process, and having the relationships and the experience of working with a specific artist, of understanding, I don't want to say limitations, but understanding, like, where they will go or where you need to kind of push them to go, is a big part on the gallerist side. And in that process, I don't know what do you think, Brian?
I want to say that one of the things that I love to do with the clients initially is take them to galleries and let them just see things. It's not about going out with the idea of buying. It's the idea of going out and seeing how they respond to things, and trying to kind of draw that out, because that really helps you establish a point of view that's theirs and not yours. And that also is the most important, I think, role that I play in the whole, business of decorating design. So that's essential, and that's also what leads to the best projects. It's that engagement, it's that collaboration. So it isn't just, I talk about, loving the collaboration with the artist, but equally important, most important is the collaboration with the client, in order that the home is theirs.
I love when the end client is involved with the designer, because it's like, and doing studio visits, it's so much fun, because that's really when the magic really starts to happen. Because then it's almost like, especially when they're first seeing the artist for the first time, then they're more in tune to ask more questions. And then from those questions, I think new results happen.
And I think it's important for the clients to,
Appreciate.
well, but more than that, it's that they begin to understand what's involved in the process of doing everything that we do, because it isn't just showing a picture and that's it, it's done. It is this whole evolution that we go through during the lifetime of a project, to finish it. And it's very complex. And so, oftentimes you have, with a lot of this design, it's expensive. And, a lot of people just don't have any idea what goes into the initial design, the prototyping, the production costs, every facet, of doing it.
When you bring to my studio, for instance, when they see things in different phases, they don't, you don't realize all this mother of pearl is cut by hand, and it starts out with these finely polished panels, and everything is done by hand. And when they see the gilding process, the water gilding process, they see the jars of clay that haven't been mixed yet. They see what goes into 1 square foot of this piece that they're commissioning. It's such a I think it helps them understand, what they're paying for one thing, and also just the love that goes into each piece.
I think the pride that they feel as a result of being a part of that process, you can't put a price on. I mean, and again, I always refer to the projects that we do at the end, for the clients, it's a scrapbook. And everything, when you show it this way, if you have a client that really wants to engage and be part of the process, that scrapbook for them is so rich in memory and story and people that they've met. And so that's as much fun for me as it is for them and for all of us, I think, in the end.
And I'm just remembering how when Brian was, we had this room we started, and then he said, oh, what I'd really like to do is we're going to surprise the client and put in a few butterflies, and she's going to go crazy because but we're not going to tell her. So it was like you were creating this little gift for her to discover. And so here's the, we added some butterflies, you'll see. But so that was so, that was just such a nice little
And she found them
treasure
too. And I didn't say anything. She, when she went into the room at the reveal, which I might also add that this apartment a year ago right now was not finished. Like they did not move in until February 1st. So we were in the throes, and let me tell you, throes of getting all this finished and installed and perfect for them. So we always refer to that as the big reveal. And that is, for me, one of the most exciting moments too, is at the end when it's all come together and you've got the candles lit. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it's theater and it's so much fun.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And you can dive deeper into Brian's project. Everyone has a magazine in the tote bags on your chair. And if you want to see more of Nancy's installation in Rome, which how could you not? It's so beautiful. We have a great video and story about it on the Galerie website, which it's just so dreamy. And Ashlee, thank you so much. I'm excited for you and your new venture. And thank you all for being here. And thank you.